Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our session today on AI governance for the work or in the workplace and for MGAs. I'm Manveen Tuhill. I'm the L&D manager here at the Managing General Agents Association, or the MGA as you know it. I'm delighted to welcome you to our session. Before I hand over and we get the webinar underway, I'm just going to run through a few housekeeping points. I appreciate if you do come along to these sessions. We do cover this often, but always good just to have a reminder. You'll notice that you won't have access to your camera and microphone. Please don't panic. It's just so that we are prioritising the bandwidth for the session today and to minimise disruption for both presenters and you as attendees. And we can enable these during the Q&A at the end, so please don't worry. We do ask that you don't use any AI note-taking tools, funnily enough, on a webinar where there is AI governance in play here, just as we don't actually have permission to use them in this session, because we don't have permission, obviously, of everyone attending for these to be enabled. We do encourage you and welcome questions. Please do put these in the chat or the Q&A option if you would like to ask them, and we'll address these towards the end of the session. We are recording today's session, and a link will be shared post-session with those that attended, together with our feedback survey, which will also drop into the chat towards the end. So, if you do miss anything or do want to revisit any topics covered, you can do so. And the survey itself should take no more than 2 minutes. And if you find that this webinar supports your learning and development, you can consider including it on your CPD log if you do keep one. That leads me to introduce today's session, being delivered by Intersys, and supported by Helen and Michelle from Lysander PR. I'm going to hand over to Helen, who will introduce Mark and Matthew in more detail to you. Thank you, everyone.
Many thanks, Manveen, and to the MGAA for hosting this session, and to everyone who's joined us today. We have a lot to get through. I'm Helen Wright and working with the team at Intersys. I'll be moderating today's professional optics discussion. The session is focused on AI governance in the workplace, specifically what it means in practice for MGAs and the wider insurance market. And I'm delighted to be joined by colleagues from Intersys who have recently launched a practical AI governance policy template, and that's designed to help firms navigate the operational, regulatory and data risks that come with such rapid AI adoption. Before we dive in, I'm just going to hand over to our speakers to introduce themselves. Matthew, over to you.
Thanks, Helen. Yep, I'm Matthew, worked in the London insurance market from 1993 as a mainframe computer operator, then an IT manager at an underwriting firm, which I now realise was a 1990s MGA because a couple of large German insurers delegated authority to it. I founded Intersys in 96, and we've worked in many industries, including regulated ones like finance, legal, education, a lot of life science as well, biopharma. I'm IT technical with a focus on cybersecurity and strategy, but I am not an insurance professional.
Thanks, Matt. And I'm Mark Kirby. I'm the Director of Professional Services at Intersys. I've worked there for 10 years. I run the kind of infrastructure projects team, the cybersecurity team, and I do a lot of IT strategy consultation for our clients, including how best to deploy artificial intelligence. Sounds funny when you say it like that. An introduction to Intersys. Who are we? As Matt said, we've been going for 30 years now, 30 years in December. We're a security first managed services and consultancy provider. We support organizations, specifically in highly regulated environments, including financial services and insurance, where technology decisions directly affect risk, compliance, and resilience. We also have a software development arm. We make kind of supply chain risk management solutions for pharmaceutical clients, plus insurance certificate management solutions, which got highly commended this year. Our work is deliberately risk-led rather than technology-led. We focus on governance, control, maturity, and operational practicality. We help organizations understand how emerging technologies change risk exposure, not just how they increase capacity and boost efficiency. We work extensively with the Microsoft platform, extensively but not exclusively, and we use enterprise security tooling, but our role is not to sell technology, it's to help organizations use it safely, responsibly, and in a way that stands up to regulatory scrutiny. Today's session is all grounded in real-world experience. We're drawing from what we've seen organizations struggle with in practice, and where risk tends to materialize when AI adoption moves faster than the governance around it.
Thanks, Mark. So idea of today's plan, we'll take questions at the end, but any burning questions could be asked in the chat or online. It is an open forum, so if any questions you don't feel comfortable asking in this context, do get in contact directly. Our contact details are on the last slide. This is essentially a call for everyone to mobilize if you've not done so already. So we've put this together specifically for the MGAA, but things are changing fast, so it's just as likely there's more breaking news by the time we finish the webinar. We've tried to ensure there's something for everyone, but unlike most of you, we're not insurance professionals, so if we mangle terminology or the language of risk, please forgive us. We'll mention a few free resources for your own journeys. Most are available from our website, Intersys UK, logo in the bottom left of the screen. The learning objectives is the next slide. There's an awful lot to cover in this session, so we'll try our best, and you can always reach out directly for help. We'll be tight on time, so I won't go through these points in detail. Suffice to say, the last one, identify opportunities in your organization. The operative word here is ethically. We'll leave you to determine the functional requirements.
Thank you so much, both. Right, there is a lot to get through, but I just want to frame this discussion before we get started. It is fair to say that AI has moved incredibly quickly from something quite experimental to something that's now embedded in day-to-day workflows across the market, and it's making headlines globally, probably as we speak. See Mythos as an example. So I'd like to start just by asking the audience a poll, please. Now, there'll be a couple of polls during this discussion, and unlike the questions where you could submit openly if you'd like to, the poll results are completely anonymous, so please be candid. It's a quick yes or no question, and the first poll we're going to ask is, are you using AI for work? I'll hand over to Manveen, who's much more technically capable than me, to launch this on the chat.
It looks like it's already happened.
It's already happened. It's gone in. Look at that. Okay, so we're getting results come through. Vast majority leaning towards yes, with around 80%, and currently the responses pushing 20% with no. Quick reactions.
Yeah, so I must say it's not surprising. I mean, AI was adopted so quickly. I think we're talking before the meeting started that Netflix took 5 years to get to 100 million users. Facebook took 3 years. ChatGPT only took a matter of weeks. And so there's so many efficiencies you can gain by using AI. It's really not surprising that so many people are using it.
I'm surprised it's not closer to 100%, because we speak to some organizations and they find that they don't know that their teams are using it. We'll come on to that later.
Yeah, I mean, and it's hard to avoid now. Even if you open your browser and do a Google search, you're getting an AI response. You're not getting a list of web pages anymore. Really interesting.
I noticed during while you were talking that it slipped from 18 to 16%, with some people thinking, actually, I'm pretty sure I do use AI. We'll touch on this more later, but this feels like a good point to get started. So over to you.
Okay, so this isn't a deep dive into AI capabilities, but it's going to be more of a practical and risk-focused discussion to help the board respond appropriately to balance that innovation and opportunity with the threats. If you'd like something more technical, Mark and the team have given webinars and roundtables on building agents and AI researchers and deployment techniques. But we'll discuss how MGAs and its supply chain get competitive advantage by adopting AI safely whilst remaining compliant. So the motivation, it's fast-paced change. The landscape's shifted dramatically recently. Think about Project Glasswing, just one example from this month. Adoption's been lightning fast as well, and rapid deployment needs to be made safer. So the concern from insurers is it's demonstrated here with this graphic. So this is the emerging, on the left, if you can see it, emerging risk universe. It's from a friend of ours, Chris Watson. He's the head of risk intelligence at the Global Risk Consortium, ORIC International. So their members include 40 leading insurers insurers and reinsurers and investment firms with 300 billion of gross written premium. But they appear to be saying that they're more concerned about AI's impact on them than anything else. Certainly more concerned than they were last year, AI at the top of the table. So we'll go through some of those example AI risks and the solutions to mitigate them. But this is essentially enterprise risk management, something the London market is a world leader at. So this is well within the industry's wheelhouse, and we'll also share our AI policy template later to help with you.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. So before we talk about specific risks, it's worth grounding ourselves in what we mean by generative AI and large language models, or LLMs. At a high level, generative AI refers to systems that produce new content, so text, code, images, summaries of documents, and this is based on patterns learned from very, very large data sets, often the entirety of the internet. LLMs, or chatbots, are a specific class of these systems trained on vast volumes of data to predict the most likely next word, sentence, or response. And that's key because from a risk perspective, the key point is these models do not understand context, intent, or consequences. They generate outputs based on probability, and they don't have judgment or validation. Unlike traditional IT systems, these tools are increasingly general purpose and embedded across the organization. From internal research to document drafting through to decision support and customer communications and process automation. Why this matters is because it significantly expands the risk surface. AI systems both consume data and generate outputs, meaning that risk flows in two directions: sensitive or untrusted data going into the model, and unverified or biased outputs coming out and being turned into business process. The pace of adoption is also important. In many organizations, and I would say potentially most organizations, AI use begins informally at an individual or a team level ahead of any sort of formal governance controls or risk assessments. For insurers and risk professionals, that means that generative AI should be viewed less as a new technology category and more of a risk multiplier, one that amplifies existing operational, cyber, legal, and reputational exposure if not properly governed.
So yeah, this next slide, thanks Mark, so the next slide is quite dense because I guess the legislators are trying to keep up with rapid change. So the theme here is nascent rules, often covered by the principles shared with other legislation. The framing is that AI is already present inside most organizations, often unmanaged or unapproved, as the poll shows. The UK, we've got no specific AI regulations. The government says it wants a pro-innovation approach, and it prefers the regulators to draft guidance and supervise. I know we've got compliance professionals attending, so if you know of any others, do share and we can all benefit. The White House has got a permissive approach and saying the US doesn't need cumbersome regulations, which stifles innovation and competitive advantage over China, end quote. Anthropic is a useful court case against the UK government, bit of a landmark, a litmus test that we'll find out in coming weeks. By comparison, the EU's AI Act is more prescriptive. It prohibits biometric use, from scraping facial data or manipulation or exploitation, causing harm or circumventing rights. It prevents using AI for emotion recognition or social scoring, so behavior classification or evaluation of people. Clearly, there's a convergence there with the data protection of the GDPR principles. Back to the UK, the SMCR, the FCA's senior managers certification regime, are senior managers responsible for decisions made by AI. I'm not sure I know if there's any case law or guidance yet, so we err on the side of caution. Identify, assign roles, assign responsibilities, and be transparent about AI processing and document it. Again, I know we've got some legal professionals here, so good to hear anything that contradicts that or supports it. We've got some detail later on the House of Commons Treasury Select Committee report, but copyright is an interesting one. In March this year, the government changed course about allowing AI companies to use copyrighted works to train models, and no longer, quote unquote, no longer has a preferred option. Managing director of Cambridge University Press said the law is clear, copyright material can't be used for AI development or training without permission. But the government's 2026 report says they appear to support abolishing copyright protection for computer generated work. So if AI generated content's got value in your organization, then its protection as intellectual property is likely to weaken soon. And also there was a court ruling in Germany recently that OpenAI is liable for ChatGPT's infringement of its copyright during its training materials. So we can expect convergence between operational resilience, data protection, copyright, cyber, network security, and AI legislation.
Yeah, so I mean, at the moment, there's no clear guidance coming from the government, or the NCSC, but I expect that we will see something from there in the next year or so. And of course, we want to get ahead of that.
So with this still up in the air with various governments, why AI governance now? Talk us through that.
Yeah, rapidity, I think, really, Helen, thanks. It's adoption outpacing control, and the race quickly becoming asymmetric if you let it run away with you. So that's the core governance problem, is that AI has been adopted faster than the guardrails in many places. So organizations who haven't yet had a chance to implement or refine their policies or controls. And if most employees are already using the tools to support their work, often if it's free or personal accounts, there's this disconnect between usage and governance. And that's what exposes us to those risks, be they legal, operational, or cyber, or opportunity cost against competitors if it's not being deployed. Regulatory pressure in the context of delegated authority and MGAs, it's amplified by the expectations here on data handling, accountability, decision, transparency. I mentioned the Treasury Commons Select Committee earlier, and they concluded earlier this year that the FCA and the PRA are not doing enough to manage the risks presented by AI. That UK regulators should conduct AI-specific stress testing, and that cloud providers and other providers should be designated under the critical third parties regime, which applies to insurers, and that they want the FCA to publish practical guidance for organizations on consumer protection rule application and how the SMCR should address harm caused by AI, who should be accountable under the senior manager regime. That's to be the end of this year. So as Mark said, I think we can assume that legislation and guidance will evolve, and formulating that response now addresses and protects your commercial interests. The last point here, risk management. Rapid adoption means it is a priority for risk management now. It allows boards to demonstrate oversight of AI use in decision-making across the firm's operations. By definition, risk management is what MGAs do well, so ensure that you include cybersecurity framework in your risk management frameworks. Things like ISO 27001, NIST, IASME, Cyber Essentials, CIS, Essential 8 if you're in Australia, in which case it's the middle of the night, I'm sorry. The comparison on the left, that's a slide on from our website, and there's a comparison of all those frameworks if you find it useful. There's also a NIST AI risk management framework, and that notes critical infrastructure, but it's a little older, 2022. So we've got some examples of some AI risks that are going to follow, and later on we'll tell you how you can address those risks.
So I've been reading a little bit about hallucination from some of these AI models. Can you tell us a bit more about what's going on there?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's probably something that we've all encountered, and it is one of the most subtle and potentially damaging risks associated with AI. It's the production of fabricated but highly plausible outputs. It will be confidently wrong. Unlike traditional systems, LLMs are designed to be helpful and fluent, but not to verify the truth. When they don't know the answer, they don't fail gracefully. They don't say, oh, I'm not sure, I don't know. They will generate what looks like a confident, well-structured response based on probability. From a risk perspective, the issue is not that the output is obviously wrong, it's that it's credibly wrong, written in a way that appears authoritative, coherent, and fit for purpose. In practice, this shows up as invented facts, incorrect summaries, fabricated references, or false confidence in areas where there should be uncertainty. If those outputs feed into underwriting, claims handling, reporting, or client communications, the risk quickly becomes material. An example of this cost Deloitte 400,000 Australian dollars, where they were commissioned to do a report on welfare compliance for the Department of Employment and Workplace Relations. Their report came back and was picked up that it had multiple fabricated academic references, non-existent publications from the University of Sydney and Lund University in Sweden. The works were found that they never existed. It also hallucinated a legal citation. It made up a court case relating to the Robodebt scandal, and the summaries of the proceedings were found in this report completely fabricated. And I think Matt's going to tell us a little bit more about one that happened recently, I think in the last few weeks.
Yeah, it's the one on the screen there, which is Sullivan and Cromwell. So that's a very large, respected law firm, but they admitted last week, I think, or was it the week before, to AI hallucinations in their court filing. So they've got an enterprise ChatGPT license, but AI misquoted the US bankruptcy code and incorrectly again cited court cases in their high-profile bankruptcy filing involving BVI liquidators and the authorities, appointed by the authorities. So I think that was a $9 billion fraud. We also know of an example in a law firm where it made up case law, jurisprudence. So that clearly undermines the legal system. That didn't make it public.
Yeah, and so that's the issue with hallucinations and the output. One of the things that can cause hallucination is when AI systems are trained on corrupted, manipulated, or untrusted data, and that's what we call data poisoning. It's either intentionally done or can be inadvertently done. From a risk perspective, it's not so much a concern of sabotage, but it is the slow and silent degradation of model outputs and decision quality over time. In practice, it can happen when organizations ingest externally sourced data. So buying third-party data sets, the use of APIs, or most often kind of user-generated inputs, particularly publicly user-generated inputs, without sufficient validation or provenance controls. A good example of this happened way back in 2016 when Microsoft released a chatbot called Tay. And it was designed to learn language patterns from live interactions on Twitter. And so those of you that know Twitter and the internet probably can guess what happened next. Coordinated users deliberately fed Tay toxic and extremist content, which the model absorbed and began reproducing. As a result, Microsoft had to shut down the system within 24 hours and issue a public apology, leading to a lot of reputational damage.
The cesspit that is Twitter.
That's right. The core risk with data poisoning is that organizations may continue to trust AI outputs long after the underlying data, and therefore the intellectual asset, has been compromised.
So Mark mentioned the hallucination. One of the causes of that is this. It is spurious correlation and confirmation bias in models. So these are statistically significant or prominent data associations that result in it. And this is an amusing example. There's a lot of them, I think, on that website. But they undermine trust, and trust is also weakened by AI slop, which we've probably all heard about, slightly different problem. But it's another reason to be transparent about its use is reputation. There is a growing AI backlash of public and consumer disquiet about it, and it might help to ensure your personal lines customers know you've disclosed and managed its use.
Very interesting causation and correlation. So let's move on to intellectual property. What can you tell us about the implications here, please?
Yeah, absolutely. From a risk perspective, using AI introduces a material exposure to the loss or contamination of intellectual property. IP loss can occur when employees input confidential data like source code, designs, methodologies, personally identifiable information, or client material into external AI systems, and that results in the immediate loss of control over that information asset. And these events are typically driven by human error or weak controls rather than malicious intent, which makes them much harder to prevent against through traditional security measures. There's also a distinct IP contamination risk, where AI-generated outputs may incorporate or resemble third-party copyrighted material, which creates uncertainty around ownership and reuse rights. This is particularly worrying when you're generating images that can draw directly from other artists. From an insurance viewpoint, This creates a legal liability risk, a defense cost, exposure, and potential contractual disputes, even where infringement is difficult to prove. A key challenge is that many of these losses are gradual and non-binary. Value erosion, loss of exclusivity, or weakened trade secret protection rather than a single breach event. As a result, organizations may face uninsured or poorly defined losses, particularly where policies assume a discrete cyber incident rather than a cumulative control failures. So effective risk treatment requires clear governance, usage restriction, staff training, and lots of visibility over how AI tools interact with your proprietary assets and sensitive data, rather than any sort of reliance on a post-incident recovery. An example of this happened with Samsung engineers. They were working on some confidential semiconductor source code, and some of them used ChatGPT to help debug the issues. And what happened there is that that data was as ChatGPT they used, and that data was automatically retained by the AI service. And even after contacting OpenAI, they couldn't guarantee that it had been removed from the system. So as a result, Samsung immediately banned generative AI across the company.
That was only a couple of years ago as well, and a week or two ago, somebody at Anthropic pasted the entire user interface code, I think it was 500 million lines or something, for Mythos into GitHub, which is a code management, lifecycle management system, which when combined with Copilot, we call Gitpilot. But the point here is that other AI platform and their competitors now see their roadmap based on looking at the code and allow them then to leapfrog Anthropic, or certainly gain a steal on what their original plans were. So one of our partners, Source Code Control, mentioned a professor at professor of computer science who said that GitHub outputs large chunks of my copyrighted code with no attribution and no license. And SEC, they've seen a significant increase in interest in their code provenance assessment, and that determines where components originated. We partner with them for code composition analysis, vulnerability discovering, for penetration testing, etc. So happy to put you in contact to mitigate those risks if that helps.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the point is, these are not theoretical risks. Major organizations have already lost control over source code, designs, and proprietary data just through everyday AI use.
It's very interesting. It's that old adage, if you're not paying for the product, you are the product,
Mm-hmm.
So let's get down to it. Cybersecurity, what are the implications?
Supercharging, I guess it's the AI, it's the acceleration of the attacks that are becoming sort of supercharged cyber weapons, I guess, but also AI can supercharge the defense and the innovation, but that needs the resource and the discipline. So AI is specifically linked to social engineering risk. That's why training remains critical. I think it is the single most important element you can focus cybersecurity on. Train and reward that vigilance. AI is great at creating impersonation content, correspondence and emails at scale. You've all heard of spear phishing and vishing. Maybe you've heard about the deep fake as well. So there was a serious fraud with an AI-driven deep fake spoofing last year. An employee was tricked into making a $25 million payment via an AI-generated video call with his CFO, who clearly didn't exist. But it makes those discovery phases much faster, oiling the wheels and automating the sort of the drudgery of the reconnaissance, and it tailors the attacks frighteningly fast and precisely. So something that needed large teams, e.g. nation state hackers, for example, can and will be done with very limited resources. So security through obscurity might be less of a protection now, especially if somebody's just accidentally pasted the source code from your legacy system into a GitHub repository, which is now public. So cross-domain privilege escalation, skip over that. You've probably heard about Claude Mythos. I spoke with a friend at Microsoft some time ago who was concerned that AI will provide this capability to expose vulnerabilities and flaws and weaknesses. So hence Project Glasswing and the Claude Mythos preview that came out recently.
We've talked about Mythos a few times now, and so it's worth stepping back and looking at why Mythos is so special. So for those of you that haven't come across it, it is the newest iteration of the Claude AI model by Anthropic. Currently, its top model is called Opus. Mythos will sit above that. And one of the things that Claude currently is already really good at doing is coding and checking its own code while it writes. Mythos is so good at that it actually can autonomously discover zero-day software vulnerabilities and write working exploits without any human guidance. It's also able to chain multiple vulnerabilities together into a very sophisticated cyber attack. It's been able to find vulnerabilities in every single major OS or web browser. Many of these dating back kind of 10 to 25 years that have never been noticed by anyone else before. So this means that it really lowers the bar to entry for anyone that wants to be a cyber criminal. You don't even need to know about networking or security or any of that. You can just, vibe hack, if you will. So the good thing about this is it hasn't been released to the public yet. That's what Project Glasswing is. It has been released to some of the top software providers, Google, Microsoft, Cisco, Apple, and they're going to be allowed to use it to make sure that they've patched everything before it becomes publicly available. But what this really means is the speed at which attacks can be done, and it's really going to increase exponentially this year.
Yeah, it's nothing humans can't do. It's just at frightening, terrifying speed. But again, this is all US centric, and this is before Russia, China, or any other countries develop their own cyber AI. So the development is astonishing, not only to speed up the development of that, but also similarly, you could use it for development of the functionality or the user experience or vulnerability patching of your legacy systems, the speed being the competitive advantage. So whether you're supercharging cyber weapons or supercharging or patching and remediation, AI allowing threat detection and pattern recognition at massive scale. AI combined with quantum computing. Google recently revised their estimate for Q-Day from 2035 to 2029, and that's when quantum computing provides enough processing power to break the fundamental encryption, things like RSA, the algorithms on which the internet's currently based. So new algorithms developed that need far fewer qubits than the 10 million needed, now just 100,000. So I think we need to advise people in the future to think about their quantum resistant encryption strategies. Our partner SEC said they've seen significant increase in their interest in their quantum analysis services as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting subject, and it's going to be quite a world-changing event. But I think there's enough there that it could be a whole nother webinar.
Yeah. So how to address those cyber risks? Again, that's probably another webinar in itself, but the technical interventions, things like data loss prevention, conditional access policies, zero trust, least privilege, so the minimum possible data that's seen for individuals. If your HR or AI system doesn't need to access claims handle data, remove those permissions. Therefore, if a breach occurs, less is at risk. Protect against misconfiguration by classifying, identifying data. We'll come on to this a little bit more later, but just as in cybersecurity, if you've got those technical controls to target and measure your efforts, you can determine what is most sensitive and apply the strongest controls to there. But you've got to know what's there before you apply those controls.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay. Well, here's a question that's pertinent perhaps to the poll at the start of this webinar, shadow AI. What does that mean?
Yeah, thanks, Alan. What it means is invisible or unmanaged use. And so I've taken this graph here from the Verizon's Data Breach Investigation Report, which is a very interesting read if you're a nerd like me. Essentially, what it's telling us here is these are the they've got the list of all the registered accounts with all of the AIs. Providers like ChatGPT and Claude, Copilot, etc. And they've looked at what percentage of them are with personal accounts. So as you can see, the green on this graph, over 80%, of all AI accounts are with personal email accounts like Hotmail, Gmail, etc. Any of the free ones. The orange part of that graph shows corporate domains. So, like if my Intersys account, but it's not centrally managed. It's a separate account or a personal account with a corporate email. Only the gray is set up in the correct way, which is when it's integrated into the company's identity system, like Microsoft or Google. And so when the person leaves the organization and the account is deactivated, then the AI account is deactivated as well. So essentially what this means is if somebody is putting sensitive data into their personal ChatGPT account and they leave the organization, all of that data will travel with them. You have no control over that data anymore. Even with the orange ones, the ones that are linked to company accounts, they still can potentially log into that. They just don't have access to that email anymore. So something you really need to be aware of.
Actually, it's a good point, Mark. So talking about data breaches, IBM's cost of a data breach report said shadow AI was implicated in 1 in 5 data breaches.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we talked about it already. Like, we saw that over 80% of you are already using AI. And from a risk perspective, it's not malicious behavior. It's well-intentioned productivity gains happening faster than any sort of governance can keep up. This creates multiple exposures simultaneously, sensitive or internal client data getting shared with external AI platforms, or outputs that are being relied upon without validation, and organizations might not even know where that AI is influencing decisions. So of the 80% of you that are already using AI, ask yourself, how many of your staff are using AI, and have you given them a secure platform to use it on? Because if not, that's unmanaged and you're losing access to whatever data that's going in there. From an insurance standpoint, shadow AI represents unmanaged risk, and unmanaged risk is almost always where the losses first emerge.
Very interesting. And unmanaged risk also could lead to systemic risk, couldn't it? So let's just pause and think about why this matters to MGAs. And I'm going to ask for another poll to be launched at this point, if that's okay, on the chat. And again, with a reminder that your poll inputs are anonymous. So please be candid. But the question we'd like to ask you before we hop into the next element of the deck is, how would you describe your organization's current approach to AI use and governance? And you can see there, Manveen's very kindly put it in now. So please submit your responses. So we have a formal AI policy and governance framework in place. Everything's fine. B, we have some guidance, but it's informal or still evolving. C, AI is being used largely without formal oversight, or we're not currently using AI tools in a meaningful way. So we've got 33 responses coming in so far. We'll just watch that rise in real time. So far, no one said they're not currently using any AI tools in a meaningful way. I think most people have realised they probably are after listening to you talk on this webinar. But we're seeing a higher number of results at the moment for a formal policy and governance framework in place. Matthew, Mark, can I invite your sort of immediate reactions from what we've seen coming in? We've got 46 responses so far.
Yeah, it's heartening, Mark, by the way, you're on mute.
Yeah,
it does look good. I guess the point is that as we determine with the regulators that guidance is still fairly vague, and as that clarity and as the industry then evolves, we can then all refine and make sure that we can appropriately target our policy and procedural controls better.
Yeah, but it's very heartening to see that so many of you have. But for those of you that don't have a policy in place, we're going to be offering our template at the end of this session.
And it's worth saying it is roughly 50-50 here, the do and don't. And, I run a small business myself and have deployed your AI policy into this team because it was very useful. So, lots of MGAs are scale up in that phase. So it is worth looking at what the experts have put together, I think, to give you that head start. But over to you guys. Why does this matter to MGAs?
Yeah, thanks, Helen. And cover holders or any organization in the whole supply chain here, or delegated authority supply chain. We know the regulatory imperative for insurance, but AI crosses so many functional boundaries: operational resilience, cyber, copyright, IP, data protection regs. These are all commercially important to many MGAs. And agentic AI gives the opportunity to automate and streamline many of these functions, from bordereau processing, pricing, customer interaction, policy admin, quoting, claims handling, fraud detection. MGAs are typically more nimble than the larger carriers, but that agility means making more of the opportunity, but it also accelerates the pace of concern. So some of those concerns include protecting the high-value intellectual property that exists in the organizations, things like risk selection or proprietary pricing models, underwriting logic, analytical IP, broker relationship, claims data. You might hold large volumes of sensitive data, customer data, whether it's personal lines or commercial classes of business. Although with some personal lines, of course, you've got the potential for special category data per GDPR, which increases the risk. So unapproved AI use can inadvertently disclose those IP or business plans, relationships, or commercial information, or unintentionally breach the personal data laws. So that's a reason to assess and document with your AI steering committee, or perhaps consider the insureds. Is there systemic risk causing an accumulation or a contagion in a cyber risk profile? So claims resulting from IP defense or infringement disputes. What are the future implications for software development, code composition, so systems on which you might be running, because software code's automatically protected by copyright in the UK. I guess we should expect clarity from regulators and a convergence of those OPRES cyber and data protection rules soon. So under, for example, SMCR, the FCA can take action against a senior manager for failing to take reasonable steps to prevent regulatory breaches occurring in their area, or for lack of compliance with the code of conduct. Now, i.e. AI can affect both of those, especially if it's autonomous. But what are reasonable steps if AI is making the decisions? It's not clear to me yet, and we don't yet know what the regulators, but we do know that governance plays its part, and we seek the evidence, and they can seek the evidence that the organizations addressed it. So as with a lot of governance, regulators are playing catch up, and the guidance is evolving, starting off vague and becoming more specific once feedback exists from practical applications. But we know that poor AI governance increases ultimately the risk of reputational and financial harm, and good governance protects competitive advantage and demonstrates maturity and accountability to regulators and partners. So the solution is really to identify where AI is used, document the intent, document expected outcomes, understand and document responsibilities and roles, assess the risk, train staff to recognize those risks, focus on the guardrails, put an AI policy in place, internal incident response, establish a rapid reaction force, have an incident response system, perhaps keep a watching brief on regulation, third-party risk, review suppliers, contractual arrangements over their use of AI, especially if they've got access to your data, data processing agreements and supplier management systems. If you systematically assess your supply chain using a tool, we've got a tool if you've got one that you need, for example. Next stage.
But it's very interesting. I think that assessment of third-party suppliers is particularly interesting point you've made there. So how do we mitigate AI risk, given that it's evolving so quickly?
I think you're on mute, Mark.
Thank you. Yes, so I mean, enterprise-grade AI controls are not about banning AI or slowing innovation. That's something you just can't do. If you're going to ban it completely, people are going to be using it in an uncontrolled way. You're going to get shadow AI. So they're about bringing AI into the same governance and risk framework that you would with any other critical business system. The first principle is visibility, as I mentioned before. You need to know where AI is being used, by whom, and for what purpose. Without visibility, risk cannot be assessed, transferred, or mitigated. Hopefully you all have an information asset register, and so any AI system should be put on there with notes about what data is getting processed through it. Next is data control. Enterprise-grade tools allow organizations to define what AI systems can access, what files, what information, how that data is retained, and whether or not it can be used to train models. This is critical for managing your IP confidentiality and regulatory exposure. The third is identity and accountability. AI systems should operate under known identities, ideally the identities that of the person that is using them at the time, with logging, auditability, and clear ownership. So any decisions influenced by AI can be traced and challenged if required. Control maturity also means recognizing that AI outputs are decision support and not decision makers. Controls must be used to ensure appropriate oversight, especially where outputs influence underwriting, claims, pricing, or risk selection. And this can be particularly difficult in organizations that are time poor and don't have the time to check the outputs. You just need to make sure that it gets done. Otherwise, it could hallucinations could cause issues in your business. And in short, enterprise-grade controls make AI risk legible.
A quick win being defining your policy for internal and external chatbot use. So, for example, insist on none of your staff entering any legally privileged information into an internal AI system or chatbot, or external. Maybe the external ones should also have, clearly not externally, should also no personal or company sensitive data should be submitted to them. Of course, proportionate to your own organization and risk tolerance.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mentioned before, I help organizations implement AI. For anyone that's on the Microsoft 365 environment, I think the obvious choice is Copilot when you're looking at a security compliance point of view. Essentially, the reason this is because you're not introducing any third parties. Essentially, all of the information you have stays within the Microsoft 365 service boundary. It has access to your emails, your OneDrive, anything on Teams, anything on SharePoint, and it works with Microsoft Graph, which means the Copilot inherits the user's permissions. So if I don't have permissions to access files, Copilot's not going to be able to reference that. Likewise, if you've not set up your 365 environment, your SharePoint in a very secure way, people may have access to things that they didn't know about, and unleashing AI on it will potentially open Pandora's box. So we help organizations do kind of Copilot readiness test. Yeah, Copilot readiness organization. And so we run a report and we can see what's open and what needs to be closed before Copilot can be unleashed. Worth noting as well that there are two different flavors of Copilot. There is Copilot Free and Copilot 365. Copilot Free, even it comes with every laptop, and it's kind of consumer version, and it doesn't have the same data protection controls that the premium one does. So any documents that you put into that could be used to train the models, and potentially you've lost access to that. So if you're buying the business or enterprise one, it's what we'd definitely recommend. Now, there are other models that you can use, and you can integrate them in a secure way, but it is Copilot is the easiest to recommend if you've got 365.
There's a strong intersection between AI and cyber. So this is our hierarchy of cybersecurity needs, which if you've done psychology, you might recognize. But we've designed it so it works with the frameworks like NIST, ISO 27001, IASME, Cyber Essentials, etc. So we sort of rag rate this so that you can see your organization's maturity at a glance. And if you can get up to the self-actualization of the red team and the zero trust here, even better. But lots of its components answer AI guideline challenges, for example, the technical and procedural controls and like least privilege, cyber response plan being incident response and conditional access. Can't see business continuity planning on there.
Comes underneath the policies and procedures square. That square actually does quite a lot of heavy lifting.
Thanks.
I'm doing the manual zoom in to read the little. All right. I'm
The
sure
slides will be shared after.
Yes.
So,
Thank
no
you.
need to
Much
squint too much.
appreciated. So, we're coming up to time here, but just quickly run us through core AI governance controls.
Thank you, Will. So, as we've mentioned, these are from our AI governance template. Essentially, it was put together by our security team, and in particular from our head of security, Jake Ives, who's actually one of the young MGAAs. I forget what the exact word is, but he's on that team, and you may see some stuff coming out from him. But anyway, the four
MGAA Next Gen. Sorry to interrupt you.
Next Gen, that's it. Yeah. Thank you. Nearly like a sieve. Yeah. So the four core principles are human oversight. I've said it again and again in this. Any output needs to be checked. Transparency. You want to know what your AI is referencing. Copilot's quite good at that. If you ask it to show sources, it will. But you should be able to do that with the other models too. Fairness, we haven't talked so much about that, but it needs to be done in an ethical way. You don't want AIs judging humans and getting them involved too much in the recruitment process, or anything HR related. And then privacy and data protection. AI, you've got to treat that as any other kind of file storage system. You want to operate on least privilege, not only the limit what the AI has access to, but also who has access to the AI tools.
Thanks. The human oversight pillar proportionate to your firm. So you might just have a racy chart if you're small, or we find that when we're rolling out new tech, having a champion or champions who get additional training is very useful. They'll be the ones who come up with the ideas. So, either an AI steering group or a chief AI officer, or is it your CTO's job, or maybe you delegate the role. Let's go to the next slide. Whiz over this as well. I think a bit of data loss prevention. Yeah. Mark, third-party risk, probably you've touched on that as well. The next slide.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like any other tool or any other technology you use, you want to make sure you're doing your due diligence on it, making sure that it's got strong data protection and privacy controls. You need to understand the terms of service and privacy policies, what's happening with the data that you put in. You want to do regular assessments of the security of it, because things are changing so much. You might have heard that OpenAI recently went from a not-for-profit to a for-profit company. That's potentially going to change their terms and conditions. Yeah, you want to be doing at least annual reviews of your AI platform providers. I mean, a year in AI development is a lifetime. So you may even want to review them every 6 months or so, and take regular checks of what people are using it for. You never know when that's going to change, and you need to update it. So we're going to finish out a little bit with our 10 commandments. If you're going to remember anything from this, just remember these. So the first commandment is to document and audit regularly. Make sure you know how exposed you are and who's using AI and for what. Pay with money, not data, as Helen eloquently said. If you're not paying for a product, you are the product, so your data is the product. Read the fine print. Make sure you're always checking the T's and C's. As I say, they change a lot, so don't assume that just because your data wasn't shared when you joined up to something, it's not being shared now. Take control of your. Be an AI control freak. Make sure you know exactly. You've only subscribed to the AI platforms that are allowed within the organization. Maybe you decided that it's just going to be Copilot and you want to block everything else. By all means, do that. And to take control of the settings. So, some platforms give you a choice of whether or not your data is being used for different things. You want to control what files it has access to. You really want to lock that down as much as possible. And I'll hand over to Matt for the last 5.
Yeah, so that might also include the data retention policies, which is part of cybersecurity best practice. Number 7, don't give away the farm. Redact sensitive information. Find and replace is handy. Don't include use placeholders like Jane Doe instead of names. Know your legal boundaries. When in doubt, don't submit. Know what data it is and the sensitivity that you're exploring. Fact check, we've said. No training, no access. Ensure no employee has access to AI platforms until they've had training that is evidenceable. And hopefully signed your AI policy.
Very good.
Okay, that's a lot to take in. Appreciate you compressing things. It's a lot of information in a fast-moving environment. What practical next steps can our audience take?
What should you do after the webinar, especially if you're small? Maybe just identify where it's used, survey, training, e-discovery tools, if you've got some of those, establish an AI governance committee, a steering group, or appoint whatever's proportionate to your organization, secure and approve the AI use, set those guardrails, assign responsibility, training. Things change fast, so your team need to know where to find those resources, classify data. Only then can you put those data loss prevention, technical controls in, do that proper due diligence on your third parties and suppliers, especially if they've got access to your data. Measure, ask your IT department to set metrics like adoption, training completion rate, or completeness of technical controls. Focus on cybersecurity metrics. Update your BCP with an AI scenario and test it. Ask for a copy of our AI policy template, which is in the next slide. There's a link, I think. Is there, Mark?
That's right. QR code, even better.
We've also got copies of other things if you're interested. So some of the ORIC information, for example, we've got some redacted ORIC and Deloitte information as well. I think we're getting towards the end now, aren't we?
I think so. And
That's
look,
right. I think
if there are any questions that you have, please pop them in the chat. Looks like there are some new messages coming through.
And also, it's an open forum. So if you don't feel comfortable, get in contact directly.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is the thing that you can see Mark and Matthew's email addresses there on the screen. We are pretty much on time. I'll see if there are any questions that come in. Looks like somebody is potentially writing something. Or James, thank you for the letter O. Much appreciated.
Well, hopefully it means we've covered a lot of what could have been asked, and hopefully not too fast. So, if there's something you're interested in, just reach out.
Might just be a shocked face there, But there is a lot to take in here, and I imagine there are questions coming through. Thank you, Mike. What a nice compliment. Mike says, well done, great content. I agree. Here we go. One question perhaps that we could just ask you, the team, in the last couple of minutes. Do you have any recommended control to prevent access to unauthorized AI at work? So we're talking about this shadow IT side of things here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's impossible to fully lock it down, but using either if you're with Microsoft, you can use Microsoft Defender to block access to all AIs other than approved ones. You can potentially, some antiviruses like Sophos or CrowdStrike will allow you to do the same. When you're in the office, you can use firewalls to restrict that. But yeah, blocking access to sites is definitely the best way. And yeah, most modern antiviruses will have some sort of web filtering capabilities on them, and that can really help lock things down.
Yeah, good one. And I think also if you've got things like conditional access policies, which are an even more nuanced way of saying, if this computer doesn't have this particular control applied to it, don't allow it to do something else. Again, that's a more nuanced way of doing it. A larger organization will typically use it as well, or a medium-sized organization. Conditional access policies are great.
And just to dip in there as well, I would also say really clearly communicate to your teams what is and is not allowed. It's so simple, but just let them know. James, you don't have to apologise for pressing the O by accident. Thank you very, very much so. And we agree, it will be very interesting to see what happens with Mythos. It is, watch this space. And as the team said, it will continue to accelerate as a topic and make headlines globally as time goes on. So, we look forward to connecting again. I know the team are planning further content on the back of today's discussion because we haven't been able to cover everything off. So as I say, watch this space and we'll have more to come soon. But for now, Huge thanks, Mark, Matthew, for the expertise here. Really very illuminating. And again, to the MGAA for kindly hosting this session. And we hope you found it informative.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Fantastic. Thank you. And I'm just going to respond to George's question that we will get recording and a copy of slides out to everyone. So thank you all for coming, and again, echoing what Helen said, thank you to Mark and Matthew for their time today.
Cheers.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.